You practiced these options. Huh? So we learned data binding, one-way binding. Another one is two-way binding. Two-way binding. And in two-way binding, we learned how MVC works and MVVM. So in MVC, we need to declare the references in controller, store the data in that reference and access from there. Without any reference in controller also we can handle. For that we used which approach? MVVM approach. In MVVM approach, data is managed and stored in the browser itself. So depending on situation, requirements, which one is better, I told you yesterday. Now, once we know how to access the data and bind the data, one more important I will show you here is, so we will today see one simple example consuming data from API. A simple technique I will show you how to consume data from API. So by using API, how to consume the data and how we can present. Actually, it's a separate concept you will learn in Angular. Currently, we are using just by using a technique of JavaScript. Actually, consuming API, Angular have separate library. Initially, we are not using that. Initially, we are using general JavaScript technique. Actually, API is, you know, how data will be there, how data is presented actually. Suppose generally we maintain data in a database software. We will have data in a database software, in a database server like Oracle, like MySQL, like MongoDB, like that, so many. Data is present in the database server, usually some server-side technologies. That means you will have like JSP, PHP, .NET, like we have Node.js. These technologies will handle communication. They will access the data from there. And they will use the concept of web service, or they use the concept of web API. They will use technique of SOAP. They will use REST. They use JSON like this. By using this web APIs, services and all, what they do is they send the data in the format of, usually data will be in XML or in JSON. Now, what is our responsibility is client side. So our responsibility client side is consuming the data and presenting the data. So how we can consume the data and present the data? So up to this part, your technologies will teach you. So here, this is the part we are going to learn. That means here we are using Angular or React or like JavaScript or jQuery to interact with the data and present. So up to the backend part, your technologies will teach if you are learning any technology. If you are learning Java or .NET or PHP or Python, those technologies will teach you how to create a service, how to create a web API, That web API will communicate with data, gets the data, and presents the data in the format of what? JSON, in the format of what? XML. What Angular, React, JavaScript, jQuery, all these will teach you is how to consume the data and present. The person who is working with Angular, he don't even need to know which technology is in the backend. He don't even need to know which technology is in the backend. He just need a request that gets the data. That means usually what we do is we use the concept of REST. REST is actually representational state transfer. Representational state transfer in REST, what happens is generally in REST, what happens is we will send a data request in a query and it will come in a response. Actually, 3 types of communications are there. So there are 3 types of specifications for services on web. So one is SOAP, another one is REST, another one is JSON. 3 specifications are there. We have 3 types of specifications here. So what is SOAP is nothing but actually SOAP is a service oriented architecture protocol. Service oriented architecture protocol. In SOAP, what happens is consumer sends XML request. Consumer sends an XML request and a provider sends XML response. So request and response will be in which format? XML. Consumer sends XML request and provider will send XML response. That means we ask in XML what we want. It will send in XML. Data also comes in XML. But we are not using this SOAP very much these days now. Instead of SOAP, we are using REST. Actually, REST is representational state transfer. REST is representational state transfer. In REST, what happens is, in REST, consumer sends a query request. Consumer sends a query request. And so the provider sends XML or JSON response. It sends XML or JSON response. So request will be in a simple query. Response will be in JSON or XML. Generally, we call these as RESTful services. So here we have another JSON. It is JavaScript object notation. It is JavaScript object notation. In this, consumer sends JSON request and provider sends JSON response. So request and response will be in which form? JSON. So these are the three types of communications. We have three ways of communications. We have SOAP, we have REST, and we have JSON. Actually, these you will learn in a concept called web service or web API when you are learning any technologies like Java, .NET, PHP, Python. Right? Angular is not teaching you how to create API. Angular is teaching you how to consume API. We are not creating API. We are here consuming API. Angular cannot create API. Angular can just consume. Whatever data comes, the data we will display. Actually, for example, see, suppose you opened some Amazon. When you open Amazon, here some products details are present. Suppose some mobiles related details are present. These details are present in the format of image, some colors, effects and all. But actually, whatever you are watching on screen currently, it is coming from some data. You know how the data looks like. I will show you. Suppose I will show you a fake store API products. The data actually looks like this. This is sample data of a shopping. This is the data of a shopping site. That is how data looks like for a shopping site. So this is the data given to developer. What is developer's responsibility? This data present in a UI. For that, you can use JavaScript, you can use jQuery, you can use Angular, you can use React. That means, remember, what is the job of Angular developer in a company? The job of Angular developer in a company is consume the data coming from API and present it. That is your job. The role of any Angular developer in a company is consume the data coming from a API and create interactions, create UI. UI means just not presentation, interactions. That means, is Amazon just presenting the data? It is not just presenting the data. You see, they give several filters. They will give you several filters. Na? For example, you open some Flipkart. In the Flipkart, you open some mobiles. And when you select any mobile related something, and when you choose that, so what happens is some details. What is it? Mobiles? Yeah. Suppose some mobiles, and you see the mobile details are displayed here, and left side lot of filters are there. That means you can filter by price, you can filter by brand. Now, what is developer's responsibility? Only presenting data? No. Creating interactions for the data. That means you need to create all these interactions. That means when user selects price range, only the products of that price range should come. User selects brand, only that brand detail should come. This is what the role of Angular React developers in companies. Now for this, from where data comes? Data comes from an API. From an API, data will come. That data we need to present. Right? So, how we make a request to get this data? There are three ways. We can make a request using XML. We can make a request using query. we can make a request in JSON. Response will be either XML or it is in JSON. These days, everybody uses much JSON. Earlier, it was the generation of XML. Now XML is reduced. We are much using JSON than XML. Earlier, internet means XML only. Majority we have to work with XML. But now it is reduced. Now in the current generation, JSON took the place of XML much. Majority we are having data in XML or JSON. Majority currently we have in JSON. You see, this is shopping data. Now I will show you how we can consume this data. For example, what is the meaning of REST means? See, we make a simple query request. Query request is like syntax for REST is, we will make a request like this. Suppose http:// some site name.com/products, and in the products we have ID is equal to some 2. That is a simple query request. This is how a REST request looks like. These days we have more better way of requesting. That means ID is 2. That means it will return which one? Whose product ID is 2. Product ID is 2. Actually, we can make request like site name.com/products (category is equal to mobiles) and ampersand brand is equal to some LG, like that. This is how we make multiple requests. Means not multiple, criteria. That is how we request. These days, these requests become so simple actually. That means in the modern generation, these requests are changed like this. Very simple way actually. It is site name.com/products/2, like this. We have like site name.com/products/mobiles/LG. That is more simple. These kind of requests are coming these days. Actually, if you see such simple requests, those requests are because of a concept called routing. That is because of a concept called routing. That is the concept of routing. That means without routing, even today, so requests are like above, as I showed you. Now it have to send response. How it sends the response? In the form of JSON or XML. That means suppose you requested second product, then it will come like this, an object. So this object contains name, some mobile or something like TV, and it have like price, and price is some price like this. Like this details will come. If it is XML, data comes like this. We have like product. In that product, we have like name is TV. And we have like price. So price is some price. Like this, the result will come. And we have like product. This is how data comes in XML. That means it is in either JSON or is in XML. So the developer's responsibility is to consume the data, whether in XML or JSON, and present it. Now you saw, I showed you some data. I will show you some more. See, Suppose we have some website api.nasa.gov. This is NASA API's website. This is NASA official API website. That means NASA people say that if as a software developer, if you want to build apps related to science and technology, we will help you. NASA says that we will freely help you if you are trying to build something related to science and technology. NASA have lot of data which you can trust. Google may provide you several fake data uploaded by several fake people. Somebody says, I have photos of Mars. Will you trust him? Right? He went to Mars. Huh? But if NASA says, I have photos of Mars, that's genuine. Because they have rovers, they have cameras on Mars, they took photos on Mars, videos of Mars. That means if you are a developer and you are building some apps related to science technology, officially NASA helps you free. They provide free data. You see, NASA says that. NASA says that welcome to API portal. The objective of this site is to make NASA data available to application developers. NASA's data accessible to application developers. And it includes images, amenity access means it includes videos and other resources, PDF documents, Word documents, diagrams, images. So that means they say that you are a developer, you want to educate people about science technology, build it. Sir, not only educate, you are building an app for college, you are building an app for a school, then in that science technology related some content you have to keep, and you can put genuine data, bringing it from NASA people. And see what these people do. There is browse APIs. Click on browse API and you can see lot of APIs are there. Means they have lot of data categories. I am selecting Mars rover photos. I am selecting Mars rover photos. You can see they given a simple query here. They given a simple query and see how the query looks like. NASA government, Mars photos, API, version 1, rovers, curiosity, and photos, question mark, sol, so 1000. And that means some 1000 photos are there, or they are giving some API keys. It is a simple query. I will click that query and you see that query is returning lot of data. And observe this data is in which format? JSON. JSON. Some sites will send XML. Even NASA people few years back, they used to send this data in XML. That means now everybody changed it from XML to JSON. Because JSON is less verbose, lightweight, easily adaptable. Every browser supports. So what is our responsibility is collect this data and create a good presentation and interactions so that user can watch and interact with this data. Now, how to consume such data and use it? Actually, to consume and use such data, JavaScript provides fetch promise to access data from API. JavaScript provides a promise called fetch. If you have learned JavaScript, in JavaScript there is a method called fetch, which is called as a promise, which is used to fetch data from any API. Every technology have different methods. JavaScript uses fetch, jQuery uses AJAX, Angular uses HTTP client. We have HTTP client also, we will see. In Angular, we will see both. We will see JavaScript technique and we will see original Angular's technique, how Angular can communicate with the APIs. First, in the beginning, we can just see how we can use fetch. Fetch can be used in Angular also. So it is a simple JavaScript method. That means how it works is we can just fetch. We can use fetch and URL. URL is nothing but the query. So, and it uses a then function, then uses a callback function. This callback function, what it will do, it will return the response. It will return the response coming from this URL. But unfortunately, this response is in binary form. It will return that response in binary format. Now what we have to do is we need to convert that response into JSON format. We have to convert that response into JSON format. After converting the response into JSON format, then you can access that data. Whatever data comes in a JSON form, you can access the data. And here you can present data. You can query, you can present the data, whatever that comes. This is ordinary JavaScript, right? JavaScript teaches you how to interact with an API by using a promise called fetch. In all JavaScript interviews, this is a very popular question. Tell me about JavaScript promises. Out of 100 interviews will have a question called promise. Out of 100 interviews will have a question called JavaScript promise. Even as an Angular developer, in interviews, you have to face the question about promises. You should know how the promises work. Generally in JavaScript we do. So we will use this in Angular now. Actually, Angular can also use a separate service instead of fetch that you will see later. Currently, we will use the fetch of JavaScript to interact with any API. So we will do, that means what we have to do, we are learning data binding now. That means we have to bring this and we need to display in the page. Data we have to bring and display in the page. For that, we will try with NASA data later because NASA data is very complex. For that, temporarily, we will see example of fake store. Fake store API. We will see example of fake store API. Fake store API is nothing but it will provide data for ERP. ERP is nothing but enterprise resource planning. That means it is for online shopping. It provides some free data for developers who want to design some projects like online shopping. If you want to design some projects like online shopping and all, you can try the data from this website. They have an official website called http://fakestoreapi.com. They have an official fakestoreapi.com. Now what we will do is, here lot of data is there because this is our first example and we just know only components in Angular, and in components also we just know only data binding basic. So we will use simple data coming. Then we can work with complex data later. So actually this website have several methods. This website is having several methods. they have a get method called http fakestoreapi.com/products. Actually, this returns array. It returns an array of, what is it? Objects. It returns an array of objects. We will see that later. They have another method called fakestoreapi.com/products/any number. This returns an object. So first we will see this, how to interact, how do we work with it, because working with array and presenting array in Angular requires some more additional topics to learn. After learning those, you can do that. Initially, we will use simple object, and this number you change, different products will be coming. Let's see this. I will show you. Let's open browser. Here, fakestoreapi.com/products/1. You can see one product information will come. And you see one product information. It is what type of data is coming? Object. JSON, one object is coming. In that object, you see properties. It have ID, it have title, and it have price, it have description, and it have category, it have image, and it have rating. And see, rating is again object. In rating, you have two details. Rate, another one, count. What is the data type of them? Number. The data type of rate and count are number type. So we are expecting this data, and we need to consume this data in present. We need to consume this data in present. Let's see how we can do. Let's go to the page. I will add a new component here. We are adding a new component in our components folder. Open that components folder. Yeah, we are opening components folder in terminal. ng generate component fake store skip test. I am adding a simple component called fake store. So this is the component added by name fake store. And I will keep that in the startup in Bootstrap. Which one? Fake store. Okay. Now in index, I need to change app what? Fake store. Here I need to use app fake store. So let's launch this localhost. Fake store is working fine. Okay. Now, first thing, in order to consume the data, first you should know what type of data is coming, and you need to create a contract for the data. We need to create a contract for this data. So we need to create a contract for this data because this is the data you are using. So let's go to the contracts, and I will keep a new contract, fake store product contract .ts. It is fake store product contract. Let's export interface fake store product contract. Okay. Now here in this, what is the data we are expecting from that API? So let's see. First one is what? ID. So ID is what type? Number type. Okay. Next, title. Title is what type? String type. Okay, next. Price. Price again what type? Number type. Next what? Description. Description is what type? String type. Okay, next. Category. Category is also string type. Category is also string type. Okay, next. Image. Image is also string type because it's just a path of image. What else? Rating. Rating is what type? Object type. In that object, we have two properties. One is rate, what type? And another one, count. It is also number. This is the contract. We need to first design a contract for the data that is coming. Okay. Now let's go to the reference. Now let's go to our fake store component. In this component here, we need to import that contract. Import fake store product contract from the contracts. We are importing it. After that, after importing here, we are writing a simple logic. Here we are writing a simple logic that is nothing but we are creating a property public. The property is product. It is of what type? Fake store product contract type. Am I right? In this, what is the data? Is ID initially 0. Another one, title initially string empty. Another one, price, that is also empty. Another one, description, that is also string. Another one, category, category is also string type. Another one, rating, rating is an object with the rate 0 and count 0. This is the data. Image. So image is also there. Anywhere you can write image is what type? String. This is all the data we have. Now, when the component is loaded, at the time of loading the component, I need to fetch the data from the API and store here. Understood? Now there are two phases. At the time of creating component, you can load. Or after creating component, you can load. At the time of creating component means, at the time of creating component means it is which phase? Creating component is managed by whom? Creating a component is managed by whom? Okay, creating a component object is managed by whom? Creating a component object is managed by whom? Creating an object is managed by whom? Creating an object is managed by whom? Constructor. Constructor, na? I told you 20 ways. Still, you are unable to tell. We discussed what is purpose of constructor. Creating object, instance. Who is controlling the creation of objects? Constructor. That means at the time of constructing the component, you can load the data. You can load the data. So that means you see now here, I am writing a constructor. I am defining a constructor. In the constructor, this is constructor. In the constructor, first we need to fetch the data coming from API. We need to fetch the data coming from API. Then we have to use which method? Fetch. In the fetch method, fetch is expecting URL, HTTP initially HTTP :/. So it is fakestoreapi.com/products/1. It is going to return one product. It is going to return one product. That is first product. Then it uses a callback function. This function will collect the response coming from that particular data. This response is returned in which format? JSON. After that, collect this then we are using then, and here we are using a callback function. This function will collect the data, and that data, whatever comes, it should be stored in this product. Whatever data comes from this file, it should be stored. That means from this location, it should be stored. That means this dot, what is it? This dot what? That product, na? This dot what? Product is equal to, what is it? Data. But it is not working. Why? Because you are defining an action at the time of creating object. Actually, that product object is present after creating object. That means the members of class will be initialized after class is created now. That means you are trying to access this product before it is created. That means you are writing this, but this is accessible after component is created. After component is created. So at the time of creating object, collecting the data is okay, but storing in a reference is not possible. This is not possible. That is the reason what we do is, we don't write on creating, we write on loading. After creation, when a component is loading, at that time we will fetch the data. And for loading component have a phase called ng on init. Component have a phase called ng on init. It have a phase called ng on init. But in order to use this phase, you have to first implement it. That means this fake store component have to implement. It have to implement on init, that is the phase. Later, you are going to learn about component lifecycle. That is a big topic in Angular. Component lifecycle means what are the various phases of component. Currently, in the lifecycle of component, we are using a phase called initialization. Initialization means after creating the component, at the time of initializing the component, what should happen? For that, what you have to implement? So component have a life cycle phase. What is that phase? On init. Component have a construction phase. That is constructor. After constructing, at the time of loading, then you have to finish on init. Same like you have learnt in your JavaScript body on load. Am I right? That means you want some functionality to perform at the loading time of page. Then you write in which event? On load. Similarly, if you want any activity to perform at the time of loading component, initializing, you have to define what? On init. Now, on init will provide a method called, remember, this is an interface. If that is an interface, it have a method called ng on init. This method we have to implement compulsory. So we have to implement the method ng on init. It is a simple void method. Now in this method, we are writing fetch. Fetch from http colon double slash what fake store api.com slash what products slash one and dot, then we have to use a callback function which will get response, return that response into which format? JSON. After that, we have to collect the data and we need to assign the data to what product. This dot what product is equal to what it is? Data. And see, we defined this. Now here, one more problem is there. You can see it says, because it is says that this implicitly has any because it doesn't have type annotation. The outer value of this is shadowed by the container. What is meant by shadowing? What is meant by shadowing? Shadowing means same name variable is there already. Now, where is that shadowing happening here? Where is the shadowing? Any shadowing concept is working here? There is no shadowing. There is no shadowing configured here. There is no variable declared. Na? We are not declaring any variable. Now you can see. Now tell me one point. Can we access a property of class? That is the property of class. Na? Can we access property of class in a method? Can we access a property of a class in a method? Yes, we can access. Then why it is not supporting this? That means, for example, here I'm just using product. That means that product is not a member. We can't access. We have to access the members by using which reference? This dot, and we need to access. Now, very important, why this is not allowed here. Now I will write a constructor here. Understood? I will write a constructor here. When you configure the constructor, here I'm using this dot and product. This product we need to apply what data? This is the data. Now you see this constructor is going to create this object, and the members of that object are accessible anywhere inside this class. Anywhere you can access. Then I'm not given even a private accessor, na? Right? Then why it is not accessible here? Can anyone tell that? Means, is there any problem related to class hierarchy? Tell me first. That means, is there any problem in the class structure where we cannot access? That means, am I doing correct? Can we access a property of any class within a method? Then where it is going wrong? Tell me. You learned TypeScript now? Tell me where it is going wrong. Anything you can tell? Hmm? Any technical issue is happening here? Is that ng on init? Is that ng on init is a member of the class? It is a member of whom? It is a member of whom? On init interface, na? Right? That interface method you are implementing. In that interface method, how you can access a class member? Properties. Understood? Properties are not accessible. Interface methods will allow to use methods. They will allow to use methods. They will not allow to use properties. Properties cannot be initialized with any value. You learned interface rules, na? So interface can contain only rule, not implementation, na? Am I right? And you are trying to implement here. You are trying to assign here. It can contain only rule. So what you have to do here is you have to implement and call it here. You should not try to implement here. Understood? In any interface method, don't try to implement. Implement and call it there. That means what is the correct process? Now, can you tell how do I solve this problem? I will remove this functionality from here. Okay. I am writing a method here, public. The method is load product. It is a method. It is what type? Void type. In this method, I am giving this functionality. In this method, I am giving the functionality. And when you are giving the functionality in that method, you can see again, that means this is the option here we are having, and you can see this dot product. Again, the same problem. But actually, this is the way to recommend how we need to implement. Right? That means you create a method. In this method, you need to define the logic and you can define the functionality here. You can call that here. How you can call that? This dot what? This dot what? Load product. You can see this is working fine now. And observe carefully here. So this dot product is also working. Actually, we are implementing. Implementing means they might have designed that ng on in it, not just to implement the rules, but also to extend. Understood? That means it's not just implementation, but also extension. We are not just implementing, we are also extending. We are also extending. So here, so technically when you are doing this, when you are configuring this, we must able to access this member and use it. And this member is not at all available to use here. When we are trying to use this, you see it's not available. It is not accessible. Now, for example, that means if it is not accessible, then how you will put the data into this? This is the right way to do. That is the right way to do. Create one function and call that function. Because we need reusability now. But remember, in that directly this dot product is accessible. It is not accessible. It is not accessible here. So this dot product is what type? Object type. We need to provide all the data. Na? So, but this must be accessible inside the fetch. Inside the fetch. Fetch is a promise which is going to fetch the data. Inside this fetch, we need to access this. That means now we are trying to access that inside here. It is not possible. That means it is not allowing. Now tell me, is there any problem in scope? The second problem is you need to understand the scope. We learned shadowing problem comes related to scope. Remember that? Right? In the scope, if you declare same name identifier, it will show error. Am I right? What error it has shown when we are trying to write shadow na? Now tell me. What scope problem is here and how to solve the scope problem? Anybody from online? Tell me, is there any scope? That means, how do we access that member inside this function? Fetch. You are thinking or waiting for my answer? If you are thinking, I will wait. Huh? These are all general issues that you have to address in basic programming. That's why you learn TypeScript so many days. Huh? Tell me how we can access that here and use it. Anything else? Here we cannot use declare. Here you cannot use any variables. Na? Var let cannot be used here. Here there is no variable. Here only properties. Na? Tell me now how. Yeah, it is already here, right? We already here. A property is defined. Na? That's the property we are having. Is there anything else? Why it is not possible? Online people. Hmm? You can see here we are having a function. Am I right? You say there is a function. Na? It's a callback. Callback is always a function. But when you configure this function, let's do this. Can you tell me any alternative for this function? Instead of writing function, is there any alternative? We can use arrow technique. Arrow technique is there, na? Arrow technique. Arrow functions, I told you. Right? Can you tell the arrow technique now here? Let's do here. What is the arrow technique? Dot, then what is the arrow technique? Response implies what it should return. Response dot what? JSON. Am I right? What is the next one? Then data. Data implies what we have to do. This dot product. It is available now. We can apply whatever the data that comes in. from the moment I started, you haven't observed that word function I used there. That is why I'm talking about scope. Shadowing is related to scope. Scope means what? Function scope. In a function scope, you cannot access the member. You cannot access the member. That means without writing a function, how you can define like function? You can use another technique. What is the technique? Arrow. So here, majority when you are working with classes, avoid using functions. Use arrows, arrow techniques. Avoid using function word that defines the scope. And it will not allow to use the class members. Then without writing a function, how do I write a function callback? Without writing a function, how we can access function callback? We can access function callback by using arrow technique. This is very, very important. We have seen recently this is asked for 8 years experienced Angular developer in MNC. That, so what is the scope of a function if it is used in a class? That means how we can manage the shadowing of values in a function in class. Callback functions problem is this. To avoid that, we have to use arrow. Now the data is ready now. Now this function should load. Now remember, you can do this in on init also. But on init, what I will do here, I will call that method. What is the method? This dot what? Load product. Initially it will load the product. Because if we want to load the product regularly, then every time we don't need to write. So we can just define in one and we can access. Now it is ready. Now finally where data is present, you know that data is present in which location? Product. This we have to present now. Present in HTML page. Let's design. I'm just creating a div class container fluid. And here I'm just giving a heading. Let's say product details. In the product details, I'm just giving here a data list. In the data term, this here is title. Title means I want to display the product title. How to access the product title? It is present in product dot what? Title. That's how we access. Remember, data is not present here. Data is coming from this location. That location. Now you see here, so in the output, the date title will come. The first product title came. I want other details of that product. Then what I can do here? So we will put another data term. What is it? Price. Price data definition. Here we have to define another property. Product dot what? Price. Another data term, preview. Preview is data definition. Preview is an image. To image, we need to bind the data. Then we use property binding technique. What is the property? SRC. To that we have to bind. What to bind? Product dot image. So its width is 200, some height is 200 like this. Now you can see the product detail will come. That is the product detail we are having. That means the product title and the product price and product the preview. And remember, actually the detail is like this. The data they provided in the format of JSON, which we are presenting, which we are creating. You can see we are creating an interface. Now see the part here. A lot of other details are there. That means suppose I want to present its rating. So I will say rating and data definition. Here we will put a span, class BI star fill, and text success. And you can see here we will put what is it? Product dot rating dot rate. And here how many people rated it? That is again expression. What is it? Product dot rating dot count. And you can see the data will come here and it will display the data. That is the data here. Now we will try one technique here. I want to watch all the products they have. That means actually in their data they have 20 products. 20 products they are having. We want to see all the 20 products they are having. Let's do one trick here. Actually what we do, so we will put here in the UI. In the UI at the bottom, so I will keep here a data definition again. Yeah, just 2 buttons I will keep. This button will have a span, class BI chevron left, and I will give class BTN and BTN success. And another button I am giving here, that is chevron right. And you can see there are 2 buttons here, left and right buttons. So what is it? Chevron spelling. Chevron left and right. That is the buttons we are having. And I will give here, this button is margin start, margin end to. That means some gap will come between those 2 buttons. Now what I want is when user clicks next product should come. When user clicks next product, previous product should come. The details. Now just very simple, what we do, we have a method called load product. Currently this is loading all products now. This is loading, which product it is loading? 1. But it should change. Then we will pass here a parameter ID as integer. That is what type? Number. This ID we will attach here. Then we can't use double quote. We will use a backtick. In backtick, we will remove that, put a binding expression. It is ID. And when load product, first which product we will load? 1. That means by default, first product will come and display. Okay. Let's do the 2 methods we will write now. What is the method? Public next click. Am I right? It is what type? Void type. On this, what I will do is here we will declare a property called count, which is number type, and it is initially 1. Now what should happen when they click next? This dot count plus. Am I right? Count will be increased by 1. That means count will be how much? 2. This we will upload into load product. This dot, which value? Count 2. When they click next, it will be 2. When they click next, it will be 3. It will be 4. Now the same thing we have to do for another method. What is it? Previous click. On previous click, it is a void method. Yeah. And what should happen? This dot count minus. So this dot, so this dot load product. Yeah. This dot load product and this dot what? Count. Okay. These 2 should fire up when user clicks these buttons. So on this button click, event is written in parenthesis. Which one should work? Previous click. This method should work. on this click, what should work? So this is next click. Now we are fetching the data updated from the API. I click on this next button, next product must come. That means it should display the next product. I click on the next button, that means the next product will come. That means this next is going to fetch the records and it will display those records. And I want the previous, then I click on the previous button, it will get me the previous. I click on the previous, then it will get the previous. It will get the previous. We need to access the data. This is the data coming from API. And we are fetching and displaying the data. For that, we have used which method? Fetch. Fetch. Actually, Angular have its own method of HTTP. Later you will learn. But this is general JavaScript method used in Angular. So we are fetching the data from API and displaying. But remember, this is only one. Suppose I want to display all products they are having. And we want user to select which one he wants. Then you need to learn more techniques. You need to learn how to present an array. You need to learn how to add items, remove items. Because see, here some details are missing. Suppose actually product have description. That description is not shown. We want that description to display only when user wants it. Then we will hide it. And whenever user wants, we will show it. Then how you can add or remove? How you can change the data? How you can add and remove elements? How you can iterate? All this is done in Angular by using a concept called Angular directives. Angular provides directives. By using these directives, you can add elements, you can remove elements, you can update elements, you can repeat elements. That means loops, conditions, and everything in the UI, you can control by using what? Directives. Now, if you know directives, then you can create more complex presentations. You can handle more complex data. Data like arrays, data like array of objects. Currently, this is only simple object you are handling. And in this technique, what I have shown you now, I have shown you how to fetch the data. For that, I am just using a simple technique. First, we created a contract and the data. And this we are fetching by using which method? Fetch. Fetch actually in JavaScript, you can use a callback function. But here function will keep scope issues. So then write callback without function. How do we write callback without function? By using arrow. Arrow. By using arrow, you can do that. That will solve the problems. Then why you use init? We are using init because we want actions to perform at the time of loading and not at the time of initialize. In constructor also you can write, but it is not good idea to write in constructor because it will do at the time of creating component. We have to do at the time of loading component. For that we need to implement a phase, new phase. What is it? On init. On init uses a method called ng on init. Later so many methods are there, you will learn. But this is a simple example of working with API. Right now we will see arrays of objects, how to deal with them. That we will see in our next session. First you need to practice this. This entire example I will upload into class. Right? From there you have to handle it. Okay, once we know, then in the next session we will discuss how to deal with complex data. That we will discuss on Monday. Okay? Right.